The first meal you ever cook should be something simple and delicious. It should be something that's going to tempt you into the world of cooking without scaring you away with too many ingredients or too many techniques. You could go one of two routes. You could go special, delicious, and extravagant. This is something that you would be willing to show off to your friends. Or you could go with something really simple, reliable, and consistent. I've got 2 recipes to do both of those things. We'll start with the more involved recipe. Although it does require a little bit more work, I've made the recipe basically as simple as possible. This is a delicious and spicy vegetarian Thai red curry. The ingredients can be purchased at your chain grocery stores, and most of the technique is just stirring a pot.
Whenever I get to chopping anything, I like to keep one bowl around for scraps and something to put the prepped ingredients on. These go near my cutting board so I have them at a moment's notice. If you don't have a chef's knife, that's totally okay. Just use the sharpest knife you have that you're most comfortable with. Holding a knife can feel slightly counterintuitive because you don't hold the handle. It's much easier to cut things when you pinch the part of the knife that's closest to your hand, and you'll pinch it between your thumb and pointer finger. It's called the pinch grip. For bell peppers, I like to cut the top off, place them face down, and just slice the red part off from the center. From there, you can cut them into small pieces that will cook quickly and fit on a spoon. For the beans, I just cut the ends off and cut them into bite-sized pieces. I tend to work in batches, but work at a pace that's comfortable for you. Sweet potatoes can be a bit trickier as you need a peeler to get rid of the skin. In the second recipe, I'm going to show you the peeling process. These are super thick and dense, so be extra careful when cutting through them. We're going to cook these vegetables in time from the longest cooking to the shortest cooking. A good way to think about that is the denser, the longer it's going to take to cook. So the sweet potatoes are going to take the longest, along with the bell peppers, and then the beans will go in last. Shallots are basically a cross between garlic and onion, so I tend to keep them around for everyday use. You can chop them however you feel, because they're going to be tender when we cook them, but this is a good opportunity to practice some knife skills. You can think of this as just a small onion. Slice it in half and then make vertical cuts in one of the halves. From there, just cut across it and you'll have a nice mince or small cubes. For the garlic, you can really just hack away at it until it's diced to your liking. I like to do the whole rest my left hand on the back of the knife and just run it back and forth thing, but again, go with what you're most comfortable. When you're cooking for yourself for the first time, you don't have to really have any skills. You don't need to really practice anything. You should be able to just jump in and get going. Lastly, slice a lime in half, and that is everything you need for prep. I'm slicing some green onion to put on top at the end, but that is just to make it look pretty, totally not required. The curry paste I'm using is noticeably more spicy than the brands I've come across, so I will adjust my recipe accordingly, and you should do the same. We're going to grab a large pot and heat it up over medium heat with enough oil to cover the bottom of the pan. The first thing to go in is our diced shallot and garlic. We'll cook those for about 2 to 3 minutes, but be careful not to let them burn. That's really the only thing that can go wrong with this recipe. It's going to make the whole thing taste bitter. Cooking the shallot and garlic before anything else gives us a strong base of flavor to build off of. The curry paste is going to fry with the garlic and the shallot for about a minute as well, and then we can add our coconut milk. Some days I like to add a little bit of water, sometimes I don't. This is totally a preference thing, but I do recommend adding a little bit of water so the final dish isn't too thick. I'll let this come to a simmer, which means you see some light bubble action. When you get there, add the sweet potato and the red bell pepper. I add these first because they're going to take the longest to cook, as I mentioned. I'll drop the heat to medium-low, cover the pot, and let it cook for about 10 minutes. After those 10 minutes, I will add the beans and let it cook for another 10 minutes, this time with the lid off. Leaving it uncovered will allow the sauce to thicken slightly. Be sure to stir every few minutes or you could get some burning on the bottom. The best thing about this dish is that you have to be engaged with both the flavor and texture of everything, but you don't have to do too much work. Taste the broth and note if it's seasoned enough. You should definitely need to add some sugar, but the amount can vary widely depending on your curry paste. I add a couple of pinches along with 1 to 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. Taste it again before you add the lime juice and take note of how much better the flavor gets after you've added it. The acid is going to wake up everything else and it's going to let you know how much salt you need to add. Test if all your vegetables are done by poking them with a fork. Do they feel done to you? If you're unsure, just eat one and you'll know if they're good enough. I added a big pinch of salt at the end and this was done. I always like to make this with a big bowl of jasmine rice that I'm happily going to use a frozen packet in my microwave to make. The next recipe shows you how to make perfectly fluffy white rice, but you just spent 30 minutes making this curry, so we might as well get some help from Chef Mike at the end. There's no shame in it at all. I use this stuff a couple days a week, so don't feel bad about it. Serve this with an extra squeeze of lime and enjoy a massive bowl of warm and spicy comfort. If you're feeling extra juicy, put some sriracha on top at the end.
For the second dish, I talked to a bunch of my friends about the first thing they can remember cooking, and consistently I got back basically chicken, rice, and vegetables, something easy, something straightforward, something delicious. So I'm gonna walk you through how to make a juicy chicken breast, some rice, and some roasted vegetables. Straightforward, it's consistent, and it's gonna be really good. These are gonna be some juicy boobies, some real gushers. Do you like the word gushers?
I didn't mention this on the last recipe, but I always like to put a wet paper towel under my cutting board. It keeps everything from sliding around and keeps everything nice and easy to work on. To break down a sweet potato, I usually cut off a little bit at the end and work my way around the whole thing with a vegetable peeler. I usually prefer the peeler that's shaped like a Y rather than the straight edge one, but use what you got. If you need to get one, I'll link to this one down below. When you cut a vegetable with no clear base on it, something rounded like this, it helps to cut one side off and then use that as a base. From there, just cut the sweet potato into strips and cut those strips down into cubes. Broccoli is easy. Just cut off the base and then lay the treetop down on your cutting board. From there, make cuts down until they're bite-sized pieces. When I roast veggies like this, I like to leave my broccoli a little bit larger so it has time to get nice and dark in the oven without overcooking. I put both of these on a tray with salt and oil. Just because I like it, I threw some garlic powder on the broccoli, but really throw whatever you like on these. I'm gonna get my oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit and begin working on the rice. Delicious white rice is simultaneously the easiest and most sacred thing to work on. If you measure, wash, and correctly cover your rice, it's almost impossible to mess it up though. Use 1 cup of rice and then wash it under cold water until the water is clear. This is just a medium long grain cow roast rice. From there, add 2 cups of water and a large pinch of salt. Get this over medium heat till you see bubbles. If you have a tight fitting lid, use that, but if your lid is a little looser like mine, just use foil underneath your lid. Turn the heat down and cook for 20 minutes. After the 20 minutes is up, turn the heat off and leave it on the stove for another 10 minutes. That's it, it's perfect, you're welcome. While the rice cooks, we'll work on the chicken breasts. I'm adding salt and oil to both sides, but each of these is getting a different seasoning. I'll add Italian herbs to one, garlic powder and an onion powder to another, and jalapeno powder to the final one. I'll put some ideas in the comments for seasoning mixes down below, but honestly use something that you like and make sure it has enough salt. The chicken goes in the oven along with the veggies and set a timer for 20 minutes. Even with thick chicken breasts, 20 minutes at 400 degrees with a 5-minute rest should give you perfectly moist chicken without the fear of it being undercooked. When I make something this simple, I always like a sauce to go with it. Again, I have a few recipes in the description, but I'll make a sriracha mayo for today. 2 parts mayo to 1 part sriracha with a little garlic powder works perfectly. And feel free to add a little more sriracha if you want it to be spicier. If the veggies need a little more time, feel free to leave them in while you slice the chicken. You don't really even need to slice it if you're on your own or you're eating the entire thing, just throw it on the plate with the rice and veggies, cover the whole thing in sauce, and you're golden. This is really the easiest thing I can think to make, but it is surprisingly tasty and wholesome. Anything tastes good when it's saucy and served with rice, but this can be especially delicious on a weeknight. One of the scariest things about cooking comes from the misconception that cooking is frantic and stressful, and I really blame reality cooking shows. The truth is that most of this work can be done before the stove is even turned on. This allows us to be more relaxed and focused when we need to be and when there's heat involved. I like to get music going when I'm prepping everything, and you can really just zone out and go through the process. It's pretty fun. If this is your first time cooking, I can't think of a better place to start than a simple recipe like one of these. Nobody should have to stumble through their first recipe alone, so I created a Google Voice number in case anyone has questions or needs help making their first meal. Feel free to text me or comment with any questions. If you're someone that has been cooking for a long time and you made it to the end of this video, sorry if you felt bored, but I hope this reminded you of some of the things that now feel like second nature to you. If you do know how to cook but have friends or family that need some help, please send them this video.